and may all your Christmases
Hi, Sandy, can you hear me? You can type it in the chat if you can hear me. I just want to make sure. I don't have Eric today. Excellent, thank you. This is a smaller group today, so it's just me. Don't have Eric today. This is a repeat session, so we didn't get a whole lot of enrollees for this one.
Well, this is my
But
first.
it doesn't matter because we're still going to go on. Tyler is here. Carl is here. Just making sure you guys can hear me. I'm solo today because I'm used to having these on Tuesdays, and why I scheduled this one on a Thursday, I'm not quite sure. So I surprised myself that it was here when I saw the calendar the other day. So I was saying we've got a small group today. This is a repeat session. I did this session in, April. So a lot of people had seen it already. Sarah is here. So we have Sarah, do me a favor and just type in the chat where you're from. So I don't see you on the list. We're just going to give it a few more minutes for a few more people to join. I'm going to unmute everybody So because we have a small group, we can actually chat with each other. And this will be very informal, but at the same time, hopefully very informative. So Sandy, I see you're unmuted. Sarah, where are you from? You guys see the chat? Sarah, let me know where you're from if you don't want to speak. Excellent. Thank you so much. St. Francis Credit Union. I showed Rebecca had registered. So I just like to identify because I think Zoom, I don't know, I'm still new at this Zoom stuff. And you hear a lot of stories about people coming in. Charles is here. I'm going to allow him to talk. Hi, Jennifer. And Jennifer, I think the reason perhaps you didn't get the confirmation email is perhaps with PayPal, it's set up with personal versus business, but glad you got in.
I think you're correct because I know my PayPal is my personal.
So it is 1:01. Everybody got the handouts that I emailed. This is basically a chapter from my training manual. And that's what we will use as Sweet Chance is here. I love her. So everybody is unmuted. And as I mentioned, this is a small group. I think we have actually only 12 that registered. This is a repeat session from one I did back in April. And so a lot of people have seen it already. And plus this one will be recorded and Eric will edit it. I'm hoping everybody that was on Tuesday's session got the recording. And right now we're posting the recordings to YouTube. We are going to put them on a private page because obviously you guys paid. So I'm working on making sure the paid ones are just for the attendees. And then if people want to buy those, they can buy them. But because we have a small group, I encourage everybody to speak up. This is going to be recorded. So if you don't want to identify where you're from, that's fine. But I do want to encourage conversation because when I've had smaller groups before, it's been really, really fun. Some of the groups, I mean, they've been 60 to 70. So this one is a very small, intimate group, and I'm happy to have you here. So part of this entire series, let me get my foot off this so it's not shaking. We are going to talk about managing credit card income. This is chapter 4 from my manual. And can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
I'm taking that as a yes. If anything goes wrong, I do have my chat up. So I've got that in my lower right-hand screen. So what I want to share, and as I mentioned in the intro on Tuesday, the profitability of credit union credit card programs is so very different from bank card profitability, which is why when it comes to credit unions, I am very for minimal fees, minimal APRs. When I say minimal, I'm meaning not separate cash advance APRs and separate penalty rate APRs. Those are, leave that to the bank. When it comes down to profitability of the card program, this is all going to go back to your average credit line, as I mentioned on Tuesday. And the average credit line is what is going to get you an average balance of at least $2,600. And this is where and why we want finance charge income to be 70% of your card program revenue. And for those of you who have not worked with me in the past, or if you've never been to a school, an in-person school, or I've never done a review for your credit union, there is a session coming up where I share my spreadsheet with you. And whether you create your own spreadsheet on a lot of things you will be learning in these sessions, or you want to use mine, this is where all of these numbers will fit together. So even in the meantime, right, you get out Excel and you can start doing some of this on your own. But ideally, for a credit union card program, for optimum profitability, we want 70% of the revenue derived from finance charge income, 15% from interchange, and 15% from fees. Keep in mind, this is for the entire portfolio, and that there will be variances between a reward program, a secured program, a business program, and then your traditional consumer program. But as a whole, the portfolio should be 70% finance charge. The interchange at 15%. The reason I want to point this out is when you're working with your processor, you're doing activation campaigns, I believe some people get carried away with interchange income. Interchange income is important. It's just kind of like gravy on the whole thing. But as we go through this chapter, your interchange income for credit should represent 1.68 to 1.72 of net sales. Unlike your debit card program, where interchange is the main source of income, it is not quite as important on the credit card program. And it goes back to these being loans. We want to get to 10%. We want our card portfolio to get to 10% of total loans, and we need to keep boosting that up. Regarding the fee income, it should be around 15%. The reality is most credit unions are 10 to 11%, if not even lower. Some credit unions are at 5%. And when I see that, and I'm talking about fee income, this is when I started doing fee income audits many, many years ago. And you will start to see, depending if you come to more sessions or not, if you look at your disclosure and your terms and conditions, and we've got a session coming up with that as well, you may be very surprised to see that there are fees listed on your terms and conditions that you think you're collecting, but you're not. And one of the big ones is return payment fees. The reason that is not often collected, especially if you are a full service with PSCU, co-op, the old WorldPay, FIS, there is a parameter setting that has to be set to automate that. And if that's not turned on, I can't tell you how many credit unions I've worked with where they are not collecting return payment fee income, or if they are, they're taking it out of the member's share account and putting it to some other GL. Please know that every transaction that you do, or every GL entry that you do, needs to flow through the platform that your credit card system is on, so that all the income and expense is not necessarily the expense, but the income is accounted for in those reports when you, a consultant, a processor, does an analysis for you. Do you have any questions so far? Oh, here. Do you have a recommendation? I do, Carl. I do. The credit line recommendations that I use and I have always used have been Rex Johnson's. And many of you know he was like a dad to me and part of my life for 30 something years. And I used to speak at all his schools, and a lot of my clients are actually Rex's clients. And I'll just shoot it out now. And don't mean to go off topic, but I think we're a small enough group that if anybody has any questions, ask me anything regarding anything to do with your card program. So and the credit scores, Carl, I don't remember, but the grades, the grade of paper I do. A and A plus should be 3 to 4 times the member's gross monthly income. B credit should be 2 to 3 times monthly gross income. C credit should be 1 to 2 times monthly gross income. And D and E 1. And I don't want to get too far off topic. We do have a session on credit line management, but forget these $500 credit lines. That's a whole nother issue. No more $500 credit lines. If you can't give somebody $1,000, I don't care what their credit is. If you cannot risk $1,000, don't give them a card at all, because those programs are going to drain your profitability. All right. Any other question on the revenue allocations? All right, so what we're going to get into, and keep in mind, these are chapters from my in-person schools, so everybody brings their reports to the sessions. I can't wait to get back to in-person. And we do these exercises in class, but feel free to take this little formula, put it in your spreadsheet, and get your last month's report, for example, and you want to get the year-to-date, your year-to-date finance charge income, your year-to-date interchange, and then your fee income, and not necessarily on its own. This will give you a clue. When you start putting all of these metrics together, there is no one metric that tells you the health and the profitability of your card program as a whole, but this is going to be one of the clues as to marketing needs. Is the program profitable? So there's going to be many calculations of your card program over time that will actually start to tell the story. And the more sessions you attend here, the more you learn. And I really want everybody, if you have not been to the one about the spreadsheet, I want you to come to that one. Now, as far as the recommended credit union credit card fees, these don't change. We're credit unions. We are here to help our members provide the very best service as well as low. We want to make our program as beneficial as possible. And let's face it, no matter what you may be thinking, our reward programs, no matter who you use, I'm sorry, they just don't match up to what Citibank has with the airline cards. They're coming back in a big way with huge bonuses. And our card programs or our reward programs are somewhat lacking. So how can we counteract that? We can counteract that by having a low rate, minimal fee credit card. And the key to ensuring profitability, it's going to tie into not only the finance charge and the balances, but your income. I would say probably 70 to 80% of the work I've done for credit unions over the past 2003, is that 18 years? Yeah, 18 years I've been in business. I always seem to find, quote, missing fee income. And this is why it is so important to verify your disclosures, your parameters versus the actual fee income that is being collected. Now, I want to talk about annual fees. Annual fees are just a no-no. And I do see some credit unions putting annual fees on secured card programs. And I'm so anti-secured card programs, you know, at this point, fine, if you want to do that, great. we're going to talk about these new payment methods coming up as well in future sessions. Never, ever charge a cash advance and or a balance transfer fee. Some credit unions say, well, Ondine, we don't charge balance transfer fees, but we do charge a cash advance fee. The reasoning behind this is balance transfers, at least in the banking world and the way consumers are educated, balance transfers are typically posted as a cash advance. And for those of you who may not be aware, unlike purchases where consumers get that grace period, that 25 to 27 day grace period before interest starts to accrue, cash advances start to accrue the minute they're posted. There is no grace period. So those are already making you more money. If you are concerned about risk, and people say, my philosophy is if you give somebody a $5,000 credit line, they're free to use it however they want. But some credit unions want to monitor. And the way you would control cash advance is not necessarily by the fees, and they're riskier, so we're going to charge a fee for it. Change your cash advance limit. Change it to $500 a day or $1,000 a day or whatever the case may be, 20% of the credit line. It can all be relative. These next ones, and especially for those of you that are using the CUNA loan liner documents, and I hate to just gang up on CUNA loan liner documents, but there was a survey done, and it's in my manual, and it was probably about 8 years ago, about the best and worst credit card disclosures in the industry, all over, banks, credit unions, and would you believe the top 5 worst credit card disclosures, 3 of them were credit unions, and all three of them were loan liner documents. And ever since then, I've got samples in my book of these ones. But that's a whole nother session. But what you will see, and I encourage you to get your disclosure or pull it up. It should be on your website. If it's not, you need to put it there. That is a CARD Act requirement. But you may very well be surprised to see, gee, we're charging a statement copy fee. We're charging a plastic replacement fee. We're charging an account research fee. When was the last time, with the evolution of online banking, that you're really, not only are people needing, and perhaps some of the elderly or people who don't have internet do need statement copies, but if you're saying that you charge it and it's a manual fee, I would say 90% of you aren't collecting it. And this is part of the entire fee income audit that I'm talking about. A reduced grace period. Some credit unions, when the CARD Act came out in 2009, they decided to do what the banks did. And I'm talking about the grace period from the time somebody makes a purchase to the time interest starts to accrue. And with credit unions, that's typically 25 to 27 days. Well, the CARD Act allows card issuers to go as low as 21 days. And some credit unions did it. Why? Well, the banks are doing it. They must know what they're doing. No, the profitability model is very different. The thing with the late fees, does anybody have any questions so far? Is this making sense? Is it helpful? The thing with the late fees, and I mentioned this in the intro, it is very, very important, and this is a CARD Act requirement. The late fee that is charged to a card holder can never exceed what the minimum payment is. So for example, let's say your minimum payment is 3% or $20, but your late payment may be $25 or $30. because of the Card Act, and this is where the processors have all the programming set in their systems to make sure they are compliant, the Card Act will not allow you to collect the $25 or the $30 because your minimum payment is only $20. And I can't tell you, again, there have been many credit unions over the years where the minimum payment and the late payment do not align, especially there have been some credit unions who have a minimum payment of 15 and a late payment of 25. Well, for years, they've only been collecting 15. So there's a lot of missed opportunity there. So that's the first thing about late payments. The second part about late payments is the grace period. And please know, I'm credit union through and through. I'm 58 and I've been in the industry since I was 23. And I understand everybody's challenges and I'm all pro credit union and doing the best for the members. But if you are still doing a 10 to 15 day grace period for late payments because it matches what your auto loans are or anything else and you want to make it consistent, no. For credit cards, because it's an unsecured loan, it needs to be 5 days or less. That is a tremendous way to boost your fee income without actually altering the fee. So there are two things to do. I mean, let's say you're at 10 days and you go to 5 days. I can tell you that will automatically double your late fee income, which can be a big chunk of money. And depending on what your grace period is for a late payment, what I suggest you do is work with your processor, or if you're in-house, your core, and go back to December of 2020 and have them count up the number of credit card accounts that were 1 day delinquent, 2, 3, 4, 5 days delinquent. Once you know the number of days, the number of accounts split by the days they were delinquent, you can multiply that by what your late fee is, multiply that by 12 months to see what kind of change that may do to your late fee income annually. And this goes back to if your fee income is less than 15% of your card program revenue and you need to boost that up. There are ways to increase your fee income without increasing the fees or adding fees. So I'm hoping that makes sense. And the over limit fee, let me talk about this. And I'm working with a client right now, and they have a 7,000 account portfolio, and 5% of them are over limit. It's 350, 400 accounts that are over limit. That is just way too much. What happened when the Card Act went into effect is, and I encouraged this at the time too, because all of a sudden members had to opt in. We didn't have the procedures for that. The processors didn't have the technology for opting into an over limit fee. But over limit fees were a huge chunk of our fee income. And you are able to offer, I wouldn't say offer, you can assess an over limit fee, but the member has to opt in. So it goes back to your disclosures and developing a procedure for that. Let me go back for a moment. Back when the Card Act was implemented in 2009 and everybody was in a frenzy, yes, we got rid of the over limit fee, but what a lot of credit unions failed to do is alter their parameter with the processor, where it used to be standard to allow cardholders to go 10% over their limit. That's what's happening with the credit union I'm working on now. If you are not charging an over limit fee, you don't want to allow cardholders to go over the limit. Now that's up to you. If you set it to 0, you may want to set it to 1%. You may want to do it for your top tier members or perhaps just one particular program. But the other way, if you are needing fee income, You would have to do the same thing with the late fees, is find out the number of over limit accounts as of the end of 2020. And ideally, your processor, I know if you process with PSCU or co-op or the old World Pay where you are using the First Data system, the number of over limit accounts is located on the CM 051 report, and it will break it down by percentage of accounts over limit. And it will go 100 to 110 or 100 to 105, or it has about 6 categories. So you can take those, and again, you can project, well, if we do offer an over limit fee, an opt-in, this is what it would mean to our potential income. I've got a question here. If the income is 15%. Hi, Becky. If your income is 15%, I would think you're charging a lot of fees. Let me know. Let me know if you're fee heavy or not. And the reality is, if you're at 15%, no. But I would be curious as to why you are at 15%. And let me know what you think, and maybe towards, as we go through, we can talk about it. I want everybody to know that if you've got a strong credit line, and I know I'm kind of bouncing, but the strong credit line is more important than your rate, is more important than your interchange income, is more important than your fee income. So providing you have strong credit lines where you're generating the finance charge income, you can have a very profitable program, and I'm not kidding, with just 2 fees. And those fees are the late payment fee and the return payment fee. And as I mentioned in the intro call the other day, we've got a lot of bankers coming into the credit union industry and bringing their methods with them. And if you're a banker, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to tell you that's not the way we work. And there are other ways that credit unions do serve the industry, consumers overall. So Becky, can we come back to that? And if you don't want to put it in the chat publicly, you can email me at ondine@GoCUCards, and I'll take a look at your fees on your website, and we can talk about whether you may be a candidate for lowering the grace days from 10 to 5. I've already talked about the cash advance and balance transfer fees. No, you don't need them. Cash advances start earning interest from the day that they are posted. The foreign transaction fees, those are a pass-through. So they're a pass-through from Visa and MasterCard. Now, the only reason or the only condition I would recommend not charging a foreign transaction fee and you basically eating the cost is if you are a military credit union, if you are an international credit union. One of my clients is PAHO, the World Health Organization, and they're in DC. So many of their members are international. That would be a nice thing. If you want to determine whether you can make your program more attractive, perhaps for your top tier members, or a particular, if you've got a signature card or a very senior premium card, and as travel is coming back, if you decide to eliminate the foreign transaction fee, just do yourself a favor. And again, check out how much that's going to cost you from the, I wouldn't say use 2020 because no one traveled, but you'll need to get an idea in order to make a recommendation to eliminate it, because you will be charged that ultimately by Visa and MasterCard. and it can be a nice thing. There is no need to upcharge it to 2 to 3%. You're not doing anybody any favors. The return check fees, as I've mentioned, my biggest issue with this is it's not being collected. And you need to check with your processor. Well, first of all, you need to find out and choose your own time period. I would say 2020. Use all of 2020. How many return payments did we have? Get that number. Multiply it by your return payment fee that is in your disclosure. Multiply that. Well, if you get the total, yeah, you should have the total of return payments, not just December, but the entire year. Multiply that, say it's $25, and that's the amount that should be in your GL. And if it's not, you know there's an issue. And that's when you can go to your processor to say, hey, I need to check out this parameter. Are we automating it or is it manual? And also, this can sometimes be an indicator that member service or cardholder service are refunding more fees, because sometimes it can be a net number. So if your number is very low for return payment fee income, you may find out, gee, we're refunding, half as much as we are bringing in. So that's another area. All of these miscellaneous fees, card replacement, check copies, payment fees, PIN fees, I mean, everything. If they're on your disclosure, again, I can almost guarantee just from experience, you're not collecting them. You make a decision. Are we going to start collecting them, or should we just take them off the disclosure because it's not making a big difference anyway? How are we doing so far? Am I going too slow, too fast? Thank you, Carl. All right, so this next section, and again, for those of you that know me, know my work, I don't deal with graphs. I think graphs are very misleading. Everything I do is in table format, is in dollar format. I don't like ratios because I think ratios can sometimes be misleading and hide a lot of information. But what you see here, and you can feel free to recreate it, this is from a client report, and yes, it is back in 2014. This manual, by the way, was used in 2020. I updated it every year until this year. I'm going to be updating it all brand new for my on-site schools in 2022. But just because you see 2014, this still applies. This just never gets old. So I was working with this credit union, and I did a fee income audit. And I want you to look over here in the total. They had 821 late charges, June of 2014. I looked at the late fee income collected, and it was 14,000. Divide one into the other, gee, it's an average of $18. But their disclosures said it's 25. So then I recalculated what it should be, and the 821 accounts times 25 should have been 25,000. So for 1 month, they were missing $5,600 in fee income, annualized $67,000. That was enough to hire a card program manager to do this for them. And this was attributed to their minimum payment was 20 and their late payment was 25. So they were not able to be collecting the $25. This one here is another, this one's a doozy. This is the one I mentioned in my intro call on Tuesday. This credit union, huge credit union in the Northwest, in Washington. And this was 1 month. They had 862 late charges. The fee income they collected, $2,045, if you can believe. averaged out to $2.37 per account. So 1 month of missing fee income back in December is here, $19,000. Annualized, $234,000 a year they were missing in late fee income. And this had been going on, I think, for about a year and a half. This is a credit union that converted from, I don't remember if it was co-op to PSCU or PSCU to co-op. And when the employees, I guess, at the processor were setting up the parameters, well, gee, when they put in the late fee amount, they kind of misplaced the decimal and queued it up for $2.50 instead of $25. So this stuff happens. No one's perfect. It's all manual entry in a lot of cases. This example here shows you, this is a credit union that was charging the late fee at 10 days. Okay, they had, excuse me, 427 accounts that were 5+ days delinquent. They were only collecting 41,000. They only were charging $20, but if they were to change that grace period to 5 days, I calculated that their late fee would be $102,000 annually, an increase of over $60,000. And if they were to change it to 25, which is what I recommend, and also change it to 5 days, that would mean $128,000. Now, one of the things I want to clarify, if you are going to embark on a project such as this, it's going to take more than just looking at your fee income and disclosures, because to do a change in terms, I'm sure as you're aware, is a pain in the you-know-what. You've got to notify all your members, and then you've got to deal with any backlash with cardholder service. So as you start to learn all of these aspects about lending and being able to close accounts and shut down credit lines, and why your disclosures, if you're using LoanLine, are all wrong and preventing you from actually taking control of the risk of your card program, this is just one portion. So if you're going to think that you're going to make recommendations to management that you're going to change fees and stuff, you want to actually start making a list of why, not only the fees, but gee, our disclosure says that we can't risk-based price, or that we're not going to score them at reissue, or that we have the right to close the account for whatever reason. Those are all the things that you're going to want to use to push your case. Talked about the minimum payment already, but there it is, just documented for you. The over limit fee, I discussed this earlier, but here it is in writing. You do want to check what your over limit parameter is, because if you are not charging a fee, you certainly don't want to be allowing cardholders to go 10% over their limit like we did in the past. And that's up to you, whether you do 1%, 2%, 5%, 10%. But just make sure that you're in agreement with it. For those of you on this call, you're obviously on this call because you have a vested interest in the card program. It either falls under you, you're running it, you're responsible for it. When your program was set up with the processor, gosh knows what went on. You know, it could have been years ago, or you just converted to a new processor and you haven't audited all of the parameters. Every time there's a change in management with the card program, everybody needs to be doing this type of work and doing the actual behind the scenes. Here's a situation with the opt-in over limit fees and how you could perhaps do it on your own as well. If you don't have my spreadsheet or you're not coming to the next sessions, is again, just get the programs, choose a certain time period, find the number of accounts that were over limit, multiply it by 25 or whatever your over limit fee, what you're thinking it may be, multiply it by 12, and then you can get an idea what that will mean to your fee income. It was a big chunk. I mean, here of many credit unions, credit card fee income. This credit union, 196 accounts, may not seem like a lot, but it would bring them in up to 58,000 annually. This other credit union, 507 accounts were over limit. That would bring them in 150,000. I also include, this is a loan liner. Every time I get challenged at my schools, and I love being challenged, you know, well, Ondine, no one does it, or the processors. There was a time the processors, all the processors come to my schools, right? And they're all in the back of the room at a table. And of course, they like to defend themselves. And I will say, you know, everybody needs to consider an opt-in over limit fee and see what it might do for you. Well, at the time, I didn't know this, but the processors did not have the programming for it. Oh, no one does that on Ondine. No one wants to charge an over limit fee. So every time I get challenged, I back it up with receipts. So, and I've seen this more and more, but here is a credit union, Earth Mover Credit Union in Aurora, Illinois. And yes, they do charge an over limit fee. So it is possible. To be honest, I'm not seeing a whole lot of credit unions do it, but I think it's mainly because of the confusion. And to be honest, I'm not sure if the processors still have the process together yet. But if you really want it, you talk to me and we've got to make it happen. Now, the interchange income. We've gone over fees, we've gone over finance charges. Your interchange income. This gets a little sticky, and it all depends. This goes back to whether you are a principal or an affiliate of Visa and or MasterCard, and if you own your own BIN. And I know I may be beating a dead horse, but I encourage all of my clients, don't ask if you don't know if you're principal or affiliate, don't rely on anybody at the credit union or anybody at the processor to tell you. You need to call Visa and or MasterCard or go to their online systems and find out for yourself. And just bear with me, one of my nearest and dearest clients in Texas, $4 billion credit union. And they had been with Town North Bank, which turned to Vantiv, which turned to WorldPay. And they've been my client since the beginning, 2003. And I must say I think this went on for about 4 years. I was doing a report for them every year. And I kept saying, you guys don't own your BIN. You don't own your BIN. I can tell by the reports, by the interchange, by the analysis, you do not own your BIN. Oh, yes, we do, Ondine. Yes, we do. They told us we do. We own our BIN. You know, we're a big credit union. We own it. We're a principal member. Okay. And never one to be, well, I do like a challenge, but I also like being right. So I was on site at the credit union and I said, you know, I'm sick of this. I know you're not. I was crossing my fingers. So we went into the office, put it on speakerphone and called MasterCard. And I introduced myself, the credit union introduced themselves so that we knew everything was kosher. And I said, can you please tell us who this BIN is licensed to? Read off the BIN. Oh, it's licensed to Fifth Third Bank. Now, Fifth Third Bank was the parent bank of Town North Bank, WorldPay, the whole deal. And it took me 4 years. So know that the processors, they will never admit this. But if you are an affiliate or an associate of Visa or MasterCard, they've got an iron in the fire, meaning the processors. It is to their advantage for their volumes to have credit unions be affiliate or associates. And I don't want to say I'm fine. You may not be large enough to be a principal member. But what I would like everybody to do, my job is to make sure you are aware of your options and be knowledgeable about the options. And I have seen when credit unions convert from one processor to another, or they're thinking about doing a brand flip. And I'm seeing the packages prepared by the processors. My clients share this information with me. And here's all the benefits if you go through your processor to become an affiliate or an associate. And it's a bunch of bull. My suggestion is, if Visa or MasterCard, if you don't have a relationship, a face-to-face or a Zoom relationship with a rep, you need to get one. And you need to be knowledgeable of everything that Visa and MasterCard can do for you aside from the processor. Keep in mind that everybody is in bed with somebody a little bit. You've got me on your side. If you are told something that you're not comfortable with, you email me, call me, we'll walk through it. But I am your advocate. I am the one who's going to make sure that the wool is not pulled over anybody's eyes. Now, having said this, the reason your association with Visa or MasterCard is important is because it determines how your interchange is paid. If you are a principal member and you own your BIN, you should be getting your own invoice from Visa every month, and you should be getting interchange paid directly to you. However, if you are an affiliate or an associate, and depending on how the wording is in your contract, and that even goes if you're a principal, the interchange is flowing through your processor. And you can tell this because it will be in your processor reports. And very often, who does this? FIS does it, Fiserv does it. They actually put the interchange on the invoice to basically make your processing fees look non-existent. Oh, we're fine with the processing fees because, you know, we actually made, it doesn't work like that. So we want to make sure, go through your invoice, or I've got a session coming up on going through your invoice. And if you see anything like Visa, MasterCard quarterly assessments or Visa, MasterCard dues, and they're typically on your March invoice that you get in April at the end of every quarter, your June invoice that you get in July. If you see a line item with Visa, MasterCard, that is an indicator that, number one, you're an affiliate or an associate. Number two, you may be a principal and you are entitled to have the interchange flow directly to you, but there's some googly stuff in the contract, the initial contract, that says it will pass through the processor. This is your members' money. And the other thing that you will find with interchange, and I say this, it is with all processors, the definition on whether it's the invoice where interchange is reflected or reports, it will say net interchange. I have a problem with that, and you should have a problem with that too. We don't want net interchange. We are a financial institution. The interchange is our members' money. We want the gross, we want the fees highlighted, and we will calculate the net. You don't book a net, a quote, net number as income. This has been an issue for years, and this is one of the downfalls of having the interchange flow through your processor versus having it come from Visa or MasterCard directly. But what I want to, that's this blue section here. Pay attention to the definition, net and gross. So as a rule, your blended interchange income rate for credit card portfolio should be 1.67 to 1.77, somewhere in that range. If you're doing it for 2020, it won't be. Most credit unions drop down to around 1.5 because all of the high ticket items, there was no travel. Travel is huge. You know, no business travel, and everybody was focusing on groceries and Costco and toilet paper and all of that stuff. The lower transaction dollars and the lower volumes are going to ultimately show in your effective interchange rate. When you get the spreadsheet, or if you're in that session, or if you have my spreadsheet, there is a calculation in there by program. If you are going to do this on your own, let me go to the interchange session here. What is your effective interchange rate? And it will be higher for card programs that have higher credit lines. You know why? Because they can have higher transactions. This is another reason low credit lines. If your average credit line is less than 5,000, your interchange rate is not going to be on the high end either. You're going to have lower transactions, lower transaction amounts. The one thing in this calculation I want everybody to be aware of is interchange is calculated on net sales. So when you're gathering your data, you don't want cash advances, and you want to ensure that returns, which is basically return volume or adjustments, are taken out of the net sales or taken out of the gross sales. Some processors net it for you, others don't. But when you're doing this calculation, you want to get the dollar amount of your interchange received divided into the net sales, and then you are going to get your effective interchange rate. And then here are some basic guidelines to help you through some of what I talked about, you know, and even number 2, where is your processor paying interchange daily or holding it for the month? They vary. And I think PSCU pays daily. I think Co-op pays monthly. Don't quote me, but I know one is one, one's the other. What I have been told, and perhaps you can give me feedback, is most credit unions, because the interest rates are so low, they don't care if it's paid daily. But again, this is all about being aware of your options and not just taking what is presented to you in reports as Bible, as, oh, well, gee, they said it's this, so it must be this. And gee, our late income is this, so that must be right. Always audit all the income. And then here, and I know this looks like very first grade workbooks, but when you're doing it on site, what I love about the on-site schools is sometimes attendees come and it's the first time they're looking at an invoice. It's the first time they're looking at a CMO 51 or a Z054. So they are learning where to find the data on these management reports, so that when you do a spreadsheet and you get accustomed to this, it becomes like clockwork. You know where to find the data. So that's kind of why this is set up the way it is, because it forces you to look at your disclosures, to read them, to look at your reports, find these dollar amounts. But these are the different exercises, if you choose to do them, to start putting your case together if you think that you need to make some changes to your card program. So it is just about 1:53 Central Time. And I'm willing to take any questions, or, you know, if you can give me your feedback, if you liked this, if you found it helpful. This is being recorded and I'm going to send it to Eric so he can jazz it up and edit it and do his thing. Do I have a recommendation? Oh, thank you, Carl. No, they say the rumor is MasterCard pays more. What I will tell everybody is, if you are not aware of the growth agreements that are out by Visa and MasterCard, they give out a ton of money to credit unions to do a brand flip, and they will pay for contactless reissues. They will pay for so much that if you, you've got to sign a growth agreement, and those can be 5, 7, or 10 years. And it typically involves debit and credit that you actually have to dedicate to the one brand for X number of years, and they will give you all of these freebies. They can be good. I personally have no preference. There is a website, Carl, I'm going to give it to you, and it tells you market share. Everybody should write this down if you're into credit card stats. It is wallethub.com. And wallethub.com is where I get a lot of my information. Number one, you should never pay for credit card research or data or anything. On credit card or credit, what did I say? Wallethub.com. They have more information than you're going to know what to do with regarding delinquencies and credit lines and balances. And they do have market share by Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express. I do know that the processors, they say they're agnostic, but the reality is they have allegiance to certain brands over others. And I'll tell you what they are. Co-op, MasterCard, and before Co-op was TMG, or when they were TMG, it was MasterCard. They were very heavily MasterCard. PSCU, Visa. FIS, Visa, because there used to be CSCU and Bob Hackney was on the board of Visa. WorldPay would be MasterCard. Who else is there? Fiserv. To be honest, I think Fiserv is probably the most neutral. They're huge anyway, in that they don't have necessarily, they're not in bed with MasterCard or Visa. Very helpful. Yes, Sandy, write this down. And this goes for if you process with PSCU or Co-op, or you're lucky enough to be Fiserv where you're processing via First Data. The reports that you need, it's called the C like cat, M like Mary, -051. That is the management report. That is the report I use when I do work for PSCU and Co-op clients. It's got all the data that you need on it. If you are doing this, Sandy, I suggest that you get year-end 2020 if you're going to do any of these audits, so that you've got a full year, because it will have month-to-date as well as year-to-date information on it. And then you can always use the current one as well, but I would use year-to-date, because if you're going to do any of these analyses that I put in here, you're going to want to be using annual numbers. And the other thing I want to mention, and I'm glad, Sandy, you brought this up. I don't want to knock the dashboards and the fancy reports that the processors give you, but I'm going to. They're good and they're pretty and they're fancy, and they're telling you how great you are. The benefit of going to the raw data and just kind of doing your own internal checkup is there is information on this CMO 51, and if you're with Fiserv, it's the Z054 report. If you're in-house, it's a bit different. Come to the in-house session next week. There's information on there that they don't bring over to the dashboards. I will share with you that the dashboards that Co-op uses, and to some degree even PSCU, way back when TMG was around, I worked with TMG to help them create their dashboard. What was it called? Oh, I forgot what it's called, but now Co-op uses it. And it does have most of my data, but not some of the key ones that they don't want you to know about. And then when I worked with some of the executive management team of Co-op or TMG that I was very close with and work very, very closely with, are now at PSCU. So, but they show you what they want you to see, and they show you things that will, yeah, they want to help you. I don't want to discount that, but they're also in the business to get what they can. And these sessions that I'm doing, and a school, if you decide to come to the in-person school, they're so much fun. They're 2.5 days. We've got the processors, Visa, MasterCard, everybody's there. They're going to be limited to 30 because of crowd controls. But I forgot my train of thought. Oh God. Well, I forgot. I just forgot my train of thought on that one. But it was about, I don't know. Someone riled my memory. Thank you, Chance. But it is 2 o'clock. And if no one has, you can reach me at Ondine at gocucards.org. If you want to phone me, my office line is area code 847-295-2051. I got rid of my 800 number during COVID. 847-295-2051. That's my office line. I will be honest, I don't check my voicemail as often as I should. Best to email me. And I'm happy to chat with anybody with any questions you may have about this presentation or anything coming up. So with that, thank you all. I appreciate you all. And hopefully I will see you again soon. You take care. Bye.